It's time to sit back, relax, and listen to Change Your Attitude, Change Your Life. Change Your Attitude, Change Your Life will inspire, motivate, and empower you. Live your best life now. Listen, learn, think, and decide. Change your attitude, change your life. And now, here's your host, Joan Herman.
Welcome to Change Your Attitude, Change Your Life. You're listening to us in your neighborhood, from coast to coast and around the world. Thanks for tuning in. I'm Joan Herman, author, speaker, and your host. Change Your Attitude, Change Your Life brings you interviews with some of the most inspirational and influential people in the world. It's our goal to educate and empower you so you can live your best life now. Thank you for taking time for yourself, and thank you for letting us be a part of your life. We have another great show for you today. Today's guest, William Ury, has mediated some of the world's conflicts, including civil wars, labor strikes, boardroom battles, and family feuds. Through his work, William has discovered that the biggest obstacle to standing in the way of reaching an agreement is not the other side, but our own behavior. William is here to discuss ways that we can improve our ability to negotiate with others and develop healthy relationships. William is co-founder of Harvard's program on negotiation and is one of the world's best-known and most influential experts on negotiation. He's a best-selling author whose new book is Getting to Yes with Yourself and Other Worthy Opponents. William's work has been featured in such media outlets as the New York Times, the Financial Times, CNN, and the BBC. His TED Talk has been viewed more than 1 million times. Welcome, William. Thank you so much for joining us today.
It's a real pleasure, Joan.
Bill, when someone hears your bio, we think of a mediator or a negotiator as someone doing work on a grand scale, like the work you've done. But we don't think of ourselves in that role. Yet every day, probably most of our day, we are negotiating or mediating. The skills you teach can have a profound impact on our interpersonal and professional lives. So from your experience, what do you believe is the major mistake we make when trying to get something we want?
Joan, yes, I would say negotiation, I would define it just as you do, very broadly speaking. It's back and forth communication. You're trying to reach agreement. And in that sense, we're negotiating with our spouses and partners, our kids, our coworkers, just about everyone in that broad sense of the term. And the biggest obstacle I find is our very understandable human tendency to react. In other words, to act without thinking, to act from fear, to act from anger. As the old saying goes, when angry, you will make the best speech you will ever regret. We get in our own way. We sabotage our own ability to get what we most want. The first and most important negotiation any of us ever conduct is with ourselves. And if we can get to yes with ourselves, it becomes a lot easier for us to get to yes with others around us.
In addition to reacting, do you think that a problem we have is not really listening to the other person? Do we spend so much time worried about what we're going to say next that we don't even hear what the other person is saying?
Absolutely. Absolutely. And that comes from, I find that listening is maybe the most important tool when it comes to getting to yes, negotiating with others, more important than talking even. Because listening is the way in which we really learn about what the other side wants and it's the way in which we show respect. But it's often in conflict situations, daily tense moments, difficult conversations. It's often very hard, I've noticed, for us to put ourselves, to listen to others and to put ourselves in their shoes. And what I find is happening, just as you were saying, is that why is that? Because our minds are so full of thoughts and feelings and our own problem, our own worries, we don't have any time or space to really focus on the other side. And so paradoxically, what's the secret? The secret is if we want to listen to others, paradoxically, it has to start by listening to ourselves, really listening to our own thoughts and feelings and needs, clearing our mind, quieting our mind so that we can then truly listen to others, really put ourselves in their shoes. So there's always a kind of an essential missing step, which is we have to be able to do the same thing we want to do with others, but we have to do it with ourselves first.
Do you think some of our fears come from the belief that there has to be a winner and a loser whenever negotiating?
Absolutely. I think that's one of the prime limiting beliefs that basically This is a kind of a win-lose battle, and the only way I can win is if you lose. And what's underneath of that is a mindset of scarcity, that there's not enough to go around, that this is a kind of a dog-eat-dog world, it's hostile, and there's not going to be enough, and so I've got to grab mine. And what that leads to in today's world, where we have relationships, is we bring that mindset, and what it leads to more often than not is lose-lose outcomes, where both sides lose, and in fact, everyone loses. The whole family loses, the whole workplace loses, and we see the costs of conflict start to escalate. And so the key is to be able to change that mindset, is to be able to change the inner game, change our inner mindset so that we can then change the outer game.
And then that brings us to your approach, which is a win-win approach. So how does the win-win approach differ from the win-at-any-cost approach?
Essentially, what it means is we listen to the other side, we explain to the other side what our needs are, what our interests are, which requires, of course, us having done some homework beforehand, but we listen to them, and then having listened to our needs and their needs, we try to be creative in trying to find a way that meets both of our needs. A classic example of that from one of the mother of modern management theory, a woman by the name of Mary Parker Follett lived more than 100 years ago in Boston. She was once observing two Harvard students getting into a quarrel because one wanted the window open and the other wanted it closed, and one would go and open the window, the other would go and slam it shut. They bothered everyone in the library, so finally the librarian comes over and she asks the first one, "Why do you want the window open?" And he says, "Well, I want some fresh air." So she asks the second one, "Why do you want the window closed?" He says, "Well, because the draft is blowing my papers around." So then she asks them, "How do we get you fresh air without you a draft?" And they talk about it for a moment, they think about it, and one of them says, "I've got an idea." He goes into the next room, next door, and opens a window there, thus providing fresh air for the first person without a draft for the second. Now, in that very simple negotiation, think about what's going on. They start off with positions, open window and closed window, which is how we do it, it's kind of win-lose. And by the librarian, by asking the magic question, why, brings it back down to what's behind the positions are the underlying interests, which are the underlying concerns and needs and desires and aspirations. In this case, it's fresh air, no draft. And by doing that, they're able to come up with a creative solution of an open window in the next room. So if you look at successful negotiators and successful negotiations, what they're doing is they never just stop at positions, the things that people say they want. They always probe behind it to look for the underlying interests, and then they use creativity to come up with the equivalent of an open window in the next room. It's not just a split the difference compromise, which most people think of as negotiation. It's, in this case, a half-open window wouldn't be enough fresh air and would be too much draft. You look for the equivalent of an open window in the next room.
What you just described it's a great illustration of what President Jimmy Carter said about you, is that you have a remarkable ability to get to the heart of a dispute and find simple but innovative ways to resolve it. And I think that getting to the heart of the dispute, what's really on the table, that's what so many of us lose. We get so muddied up in the argument, I think that sometimes we don't even know what we're arguing about after a while. So what advice do you offer to help someone learn how to get to that heart and stay on message?
Well, the first thing is we have to get to yes with ourselves. So the foundation of this is the ability, Joan, I like to use the metaphor of going to the balcony. It's almost like you're negotiating on a stage with the other person. Part of you goes to a mental and emotional balcony, which is a place of perspective, a place where you can kind of get the larger view, where you can look at what's the heart of the matter, as you say, a place of clarity and calm, a place of self-control and self-mastery, a place where you can keep your eyes on the prize. And if we can learn to go to the balcony, that's, to me, the basis of getting to yes with ourselves, which is not just give in to the first reaction, but essentially focus on what's truly important to us, what is the heart of the matter. Then I think we have a good chance to get to yes with the other side.
What about respecting the person that you're in dialogue with? How important is that?
It's interesting. I've worked in all these very difficult and complex matters, but I would say over the last 35 years of experience that I've had in everything from family feuds to civil wars, I would say that one of the biggest lessons for me is just the simplest thing is that maybe the cheapest concession we can make in negotiation, the thing that costs us nothing but means everything to the other side, is to give the other side basic elemental respect, and which we often do by listening to them and showing positive attention. If we can, I've seen so many negotiations, so many battles take place that really turn around the issue of people don't feel respected by the other. And if we can break that cycle of disrespect by offering respect to the other, then we have a chance to turn the situation around from confrontation into cooperation.
Bill, something that I am really guilty of, and I'm not, and I'm actually ashamed to say this, but it's bringing up the past when I'm in an argument. Sometimes I don't even know what I did yesterday, but I can tell another person what he or she did 20 years ago. So how important is it for us to stay in the present, to not drudge up everything someone else has done?
Very important, because that's a natural human. It's natural. It's human to get lost in the past. We carry resentments. We all have little black books. And I see that both in family situations, in workplaces, or I'm just headed to the Middle East. And people recite everything that happened in the past. And you did this and you did that. And yet the only place where we can't change the past, but the only place where we can affect positive change, the only place of power that we really have is right now in the present. That's where we have our chance to change the situation. So the ability to move the spotlight from the past to the present and say, look, I understand what happened, and it's sometimes useful to talk about the past, learn from the past and whatever, but the main opportunity, the main chance we have is in the present. Who can do what right now to improve the situation, to change the situation? That's where our focus needs to be.
So if someone is listening to you right now, and perhaps they're in the middle of a conflict with another person, and their mind keeps saying, well, I'm trying all the things he's saying, but the other person won't budge. That's that old mentality, isn't it? It really comes down to us, the way we view the situation.
It's true. And, I've specialized in dealing with difficult people, difficult situations. I've written books about it, getting past no and so on. And I have to say that we have this blind spot inside of us. And that, what I see so much in conflict situations is the blame game. It's always the other side's fault. The husband blames the wife blames the husband, union blames management blames the union. Someone needs to break that cycle, and it could be us. By how? By taking back our own power. Because when you blame the other side, you're effectively surrendering your power to them. You're saying, you are to blame, you have the power to change the situation, I don't. You're the victim. But if we can take responsibility, if we can say, look, I'm responsible for this relationship. Even if you're only 1% responsible, you could take responsibility. It's not about blaming yourself, but the ability to respond constructively to change the situation. Then you have a chance to come from a place of power and a place of transformative potential.
And what about having the ability to put yourself in the other person's shoes?
Well, that is perhaps, when people ask me, what's the most important skill that you need as a negotiator? If you had to pick just one, that's the one I usually pick, is it's the ability to put yourself in the other side's shoes, because after all, negotiation is an exercise in influence. You're trying to change the other side's mind. How can we possibly change the other side's mind if we don't know where that mind is? And so put yourself in their shoes. But what I often find is that it's difficult for us to put ourselves in the other person's shoes because we haven't put ourselves in our own shoes. It sounds strange to say put yourself in your own shoes, but how many of us can honestly say that we truly listen to ourselves the way a good friend might, with some empathy?
Mm-hmm.
Because usually what's going on in our mind is this kind of negative self-talk. I mean, psychologists say that we have up to 60,000 thoughts in the course of a day. The great majority, maybe 80% of them, are negative. And, it's like, you can't do this, you're a failure. We have that inner critic that's chattering away in our brain. And as the old saying goes, if we talk to our friends the way we talk to ourselves, we wouldn't have any. So it's like the key to me is the ability first to be able to put ourselves in our own shoes, to be able to observe our own thoughts and feelings, accept them, because by accepting them and by recognizing them, we don't need to let them control our lives.
Bill, do you find that sometimes people are not even clear on what they want to achieve in a negotiation?
Absolutely. It's funny because you'd think that people would know what they want. We would know what we want, but so often in life I find that we really don't know what we want. I was just helping a gentleman who was involved in a very big legal dispute with his business partner, and when I talked to him, he wasn't sure what he really wanted. He wasn't sure. Did he want to fight? Did he want revenge? Or did he want to actually move on with his life? And then even, when I asked him, what do you really want, he gave me his positions. He gave me the equivalent of an open window and a closed window, with Spock and, the elimination of the non-compete clause. But once I talked to him, I said, what do you really want? What's behind your position? What it turned out what he really wanted was freedom. And I said, well, what do you want the freedom for? And he said, well, it's to spend time with my family, which is the most important thing in my life, and then to go ahead and pursue other business deals. Well, once we got to the bottom of that, once he was able to put himself in his own shoes and understand what his real yes was, a yes to his own freedom, then it wasn't, even though this dispute had gone on for 2.5 years and was widely expected in the press and everything gone for another 8 years, we were able to settle it in 4 days in a way that he said he got everything that he wanted, but most importantly, he got his life back.
The book is Getting to Yes with Yourself and Other Worthy Opponents by William Ury. If you'd like to learn more about William or his work, you can visit his website, williamury.com. That's Ury, U-R-Y, williamury.com. Bill, what would you like to leave our listeners with?
I'd just like to leave you with the idea of that we have this incredible opportunity to influence ourselves, to get to yes with ourselves, which is maybe a challenging negotiation for sure, but it's the most rewarding negotiation because it's the key to our inner satisfaction. And then out of that comes our ability to deal with others in a way that we can get to yes with them, we can make peace in our families, in our workplaces, and in our world.
Bill, thank you so much for being here with us today. This is just another wonderful reminder about how much power we really have. And I know when we think about things such as negotiating and mediating with others, we tend to think we don't have power. And you really have shown us that we are in control when we allow ourselves to be. So thank you.
It's my pleasure, Joan. I want to wish all of your listeners much success in getting to yes with yourself and others.
We'll be right back. Hi, this is Joan Herman, host of Change Your Attitude, Change Your Life. Did you know that Change Your Attitude, Change Your Life has a free monthly digital magazine that can be read online or emailed to your inbox? Every month, nationally recognized leaders in their field provide information to educate, inspire, and motivate you. We believe in a holistic approach to life, incorporating mind, body, and spirit. Check out a copy of Change Your Attitude, Change Your Life 24/7. Visit cyacyl.com and be sure to tell your friends. Thank you for joining us today. We hope you found the show informative. At Change Your Attitude, Change Your Life, we believe that knowledge is power. Take what you've learned, apply it, and live your best life now. Remember that the information provided are the opinions of our guests and should never replace the advice of a professional who knows your personal situation. If you'd like more information, visit our website, cyacyl.com. That stands for Change Your Attitude, Change Your Life. While on the site, listen to past shows on demand, read the digital magazine, and be sure to follow the show on Facebook and Twitter. Until next time, this is Joan Herman. Thanks for tuning in.